I had a doctor's appointment a while back, and while I was in the waiting room, a nurse came out, not a nurse, a nun. A nun came out of the doctor's office, and she looked horrified. Her face was white as a ghost, so when I went in to see the doctor, I said, I saw that nun leave. She looked petrified. And he said, I told her she was pregnant. And I was like, wait, what? That nun was pregnant? And he said, of course not. But it sure cured her hiccups. When we were sitting over there, I told Kathy, I got that joke from a nun. And the nun who told me the joke said, this one's confirmed funny. Confirmed funny. I hope this doesn't look tacky, but anyway, I got introduced to unity at the perfect time and through the perfect channel. If it came any other way, it would have never superseded the prejudice I had towards church and what I thought religion was and all that stuff. And it was in the early 80s. I was in the military, and I got orders to a training center where we were going to learn how faith and love were more effective and reliable than force. Can you believe this? Yeah, well, I couldn't believe it at that time. When I walked in, I was like, what? And the leaders there, all the facilitators, were like warrior monks. And my facilitator was this battle-tested Marine gunny sergeant. If you don't know what a Marine gunny sergeant is, that's the highest you can go enlisted in the Marines. And these guys are the frontline guys. This guy was a Vietnam vet. Like I said, it's the early 80s, so he was only in his late 30s. And the first day there, he pulls me out in front of everyone, and he goes, Foozaro, do you know how a coward goes through life? And I thought, typical. Just like every other boot camp, this guy's going to lean into me. But what he did was he went like this. He held his fists up like he was going to fight, and he said like this. And he said, I wasted a big portion of my life like this because I was afraid of life. And he said, wouldn't it be great to go through life like this? And he went like this. Wow. He was like all these medals and tattoos, and it just melted away. And I thought to myself, I will do anything. Yes, I will do anything to learn how to do that. And that's what this place was all about. I read books. The first book was, these are crazy. Even now looking back, it seems absurd that we were doing this. I was reading, the first book was Living, Loving, Learning by Leo Buscaglia. The training, it was boot camp for warrior monks. So we were told you're going to pray, we're going to meditate. I had no idea what any of this stuff was. I read The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, Find and Use Your Inner Power by Emmett Fox, and I'm eating this stuff up. And I got started because one of the other warrior monks asked me, because I had never read a book, from start to finish. After a few pages, I would just turn to the back. But, so somehow these guys knew that, and he said, can you read 2 pages a night? Just 2. I said, yeah, I could read 2 pages a night. And this is what they understood. When we set the bar low, we set ourselves up for success. I still read 2 pages a night. And it does a lot more than you realize. Because when I read something from a spiritual book, and yeah, I get distracted. Oh, one more YouTube video. But I always have to discipline myself, and I read 2 pages. The book I'm reading now is The Power of Decision by Raymond Charles Barker. So, because at night before you go to bed, your subconscious, now I learned all this stuff and that time, but it stuck with me because before we go to sleep at night, your subconscious is like wet cement. So what you do the last thing before you go to bed starts to firm up in there. So now I like to put something really good at the end of a YouTube video that makes me feel bad, you know? So I still do this. And what happens is we start to wake up feeling more happy and enthusiastic instead of grumbling, which was my old habit. And in addition to this, I got to check because I always go off, that train of thought just left the station, so we're going to find another one here. So what we were learning, what the whole point of this stuff was, that we weren't just reading it, to talk about it. We were expected to apply this stuff and see that we could transform. It wasn't about learning how to live by faith and love so we can endure life. No, we were told we're going to learn how to live by faith and love so we can transform our circumstances. And faith and love, like you think, oh, faith, yikes, that word. It means, it's a tiny little word, but it means so many different things to many, many people. A noun, what's your faith, or faith, the faith. But I learned from these guys, faith is just joyful expectancy. Joyful expectancy. Fear is morbid expectancy. And faith and love is a mental approach to life. It's a mental approach. It's a happy and loving approach to your circumstances, believing that all things are working together for good. Or it's a happy and loving approach to life where I'm believing God is going before me, arranging things on my behalf, transforming those scary and terrifying circumstances that I'm about to face into ones that are going to be pleasant, to where I'm calling up my friend afterwards and going, holy cow, you're not going to believe it. And that's what we learned. Because when we take these attitudes of mind have power because of the believing in it. I had the believing that God is going before me, arranging things on my behalf, which was hard to believe at first, but when we started seeing examples of it happening in real time, or we were also reminded to connect the dots. I still tell all my friends, connect the dots, meaning at the end of the day, when you think, I didn't do anything, nothing happened, but you start connecting the dots backwards, and you go, holy cow. I decided to go this way instead of that way, and I ran into so-and-so, and then this, and this, or this opportunity came in the most bizarre way simply because I decided to answer the phone and said, I don't want to talk to them. Little things like that. And the discipline I'm talking about and the stepping out boldly I'm talking about that we're going to get into is stepping out boldly does not mean stepping out, pushing and shoving to get what I want. I learned early on that if you got to fight to get it, you're going to have to fight to keep it. And with this happy and loving approach, just maintaining that makes me attractive to circumstances that correspond with that. Or like Kathy likes to remind us, it's the universe's job to match our frequency, and our frequency is our feeling nature. So while I was still new at this, we had to go to a group, to a meeting where a speaker was brought in to talk to us, and he was a civilian, and this time the warrior monk sitting next to me was also a civilian, and his name was Mike too. And as the man's walking up to the podium, Mike leans over and he says, that guy Jack that's going to be speaking to us, he's the happiest guy you'll ever meet. And at the time, with my old, quick to perceive things the way I thought they were, I quickly, checked out Jack and I said, of course he's happy, he's rich. And Mike just looked at me, disappointed, and he said, no, he's not happy because he's rich. He's rich because he's happy. And that is what Kathy was talking about when she says it's the universe's job to match our vibration. I don't have to wait for things that I think are going to make me happy, and then I'll be happy. The trick is to eliminate those things from my mind when they come up that make me unhappy. Self-condemnation and self-criticism are not happy frames of mind, so we can let those go. I didn't know that. I thought you had to believe those ideas, and that's where discipline comes in. When I went to the military, I thought I needed discipline. I had the wrong idea of what discipline was. All my life, the way it seemed that the word discipline was being presented to me was that discipline is whipping yourself into doing things you know you ought to be doing. Or surrounding yourself with impending punishment so you're forced to be a good little 8-year-old. These were my ideas of discipline. Discipline, this was another thing that blew my mind. And I'm hearing this from battle-tested Marines. If I heard this from anyone else, at that time I was 23, if I heard this from anyone else, a friend, yeah, a priest, oh yeah, of course, but hearing it from these guys blew my mind. And that's the thing, when the student is ready, it's not just the teacher appears, the perfect teacher appears. So they explain, discipline comes from the word disciple. It's right there in there. I never saw that. It simply means to go in a good way. The origin is follow the loving leading. The loving leader. So stepping out boldly is having the courage to follow my intuition. Most all the time, it's my heart's desire. But when it crops up, it always seems like something so unreasonable or silly that we tend to go, whatever, until later on. And a lot of us have different names for our intuition, but the name that's most unanimously recognized is, I had a feeling. I had a feeling I should have done that. I had a feeling I shouldn't have. That's the intuition. So stepping up boldly is having the discipline to go with that. And the other things regarding he's not happy because he's rich because he's happy. Did you know trouble can't stand a happy person? It is true. It is true. And I also learned that a smiling man is a confident man. A smiling man is an indication of a confident man. Confident all things are coming together for good. So, at the end of this it was 30 days of prayer, meditation. And at the end of these, and reading these books and applying it, these are mental attitudes. An attitude, there's oh God, what's his name? Clement Stone. What's the whole name? Is that it? Samuel Clement Stone? This guy was one of those early New Thought writers, and he said, there's very little difference among people, but that little difference makes a big difference. And that little difference that makes a big difference is attitude. And attitude is the mental approach to life. So Towards the end of this 30 days, we had to go back to our duty stations, and we were all from different places, and prove that this stuff really works as we apply it to all sorts of circumstances. And I still had 3 more years in this enlistment to face things that you normally don't face in civilian life, but I was convinced, I was all in that this stuff is going to work. Because the other option was too much for me. So as I was leaving, one of the facilitators said, "Where's your duty station?" I told them where the duty station was. They said, "Great, there's a Unity church there. And they're teaching the same stuff we're teaching here." And that's how I ended up going to my first Unity church. And on the subject of it's the universe's job to match our frequency, he's not happy because he's rich because he's happy. That train just left the station too. You know what? This is one of the benefits of getting to live this long, folks. Yeah, okay. So I'm not alone. Okay. So I'm gonna share a Bible verse, and I know some people are allergic to Bible verses. Like I mentioned, this stuff seemed weird to me too. I was very allergic to Bible verses because I had no idea. I mean, it wasn't until I started to consider what they mean that I started to realize, you know what? Bible verses are just positive quotes that are really, really old. That's it. So, to sum this whole idea up, it's Matthew chapter 6:33. I know, scary stuff, right? And it simply says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you too." Just like Jack, I could live like Jack if I maintain my happiness through discipline, going with the good, and trusting my intuition. So this was like discovering superpowers I had no idea I had. But it was pointed out, because I'm thinking, like, how did I not know about this? Like, does anyone else know about this? And it was pointed out that these teachings have been kept alive for centuries by mystics and teachers and artists throughout history through the use of parables and symbolism. And a parable is it means a two-story story. It means two things to consider. Or as in Arab, the apparent is a bridge to what's real. Meaning there's the surface story, and then there's the truth. And the truth is always reinforcing that faith and love are more effective and reliable than force. What a relief. So, every country has a universally recognized monument. Maybe not every country, but I can name 4. France has Eiffel Tower, yes. Egypt, the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx. Italy, not pizza, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And the United States, Statue of Liberty. Okay. So let's see if there's any symbolism in the Statue of Liberty, shall we? I think so. Because this is where you start to become aware that this is everywhere. It's not just in church. It's everywhere we go. You could see it in movies. Once you have the understanding and start looking at life with this perspective, that there's something else here that's more important than meets the eye, you'll see it. So I don't know if you ever realized this, but the Statue of Liberty is not standing still. Do you know that? I grew up near the Statue of Liberty in New Jersey, and I didn't know that till I was in my late 30s, so don't feel bad. Because her right foot is actually in a position where she's about to take a step forward. And the right side of the body, the right hand, metaphysically, means the side of truth and power. The idea that if I move forward with faith and love, trusting my inner guidance, things will work out. And next to that foot is a broken chain. And that represents the chains of oppression, the shackles of fear, doubt, and worry that start to plague us before we take that first step. But she's not hammering them off. It's symbolism. As soon as we decide to take that step, they let go. You know, it's not what people may think about me that prevents me or holds me back from being myself. It's what I think people will think about me that holds me back from being myself. And that's what this symbolizes. And then in her left hand is a tablet, and inscribed in there in Roman numerals is July 4th, 1776. And that represents America's Declaration of Independence. And what that symbolizes is, once we make a decision, our personal Declaration of Independence, to move forward towards our desire, trusting our intuition, the universe will conspire in our favor. Providence, divine providence, will illuminate our path. And that is symbolized by the torch she's holding high above her head in her right hand. And what that means is, as you take a step forward, your intuition will guide you every step of the way. And when we do that, folks, we're crowned with favor, just like Lady Liberty. And on that crown are 7 spikes representing 7 rays of light. Because, you know, when you move forward with your intuition, you feel enthusiastic. You feel radiant. And as we pursue our desires, that is what inspires others. Not telling people, I did this. Wee, look at me. Look at my bio. Wee-bow. No, it's our example that blows people away. And the 7 rays, they actually are, it's a way to show that this message, the universality of this message, no matter where you are or who you are, across all 7 continents or 7 seas, can also experience this same freedom and enjoy being and doing and having their heart's desire if you just step out boldly. And to wrap things up, because there's one thing people will not forgive you for. So to wrap things up, there's, speaking of, on the topic of stepping out boldly, I often think about, you know, those founding fathers, and there wasn't just a few, who got together to sign the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. First of all, the East Coast in New England is extremely humid, uncomfortable during that month. And unfortunately for them, the style was wigs and wool. So, and no AC. And they were crowded in a room probably just a little tighter than this. There was 56 of them in there, and the doors and windows had to be shut, and they were guarded. Why? Because at that time, the United States didn't have freedom of assembly. If two or more colonialists were standing on the street together, a British guard would say, "Move along." So they're in here and they're about to sign their death warrant, folks, because signing this declaration was an act of treason. And you know, things happen in your mind when you get your back up against the wall, but it doesn't have to be that far back against the wall to understand what they were going through. Because they were probably thinking, like I would be thinking, well, is being English subjects really that bad? Really? I mean, come on. It's not that bad. There's at least no risk of being hung, you know? And it's funny, because I could do that. I've become an ace at painting red lights green, you know, where, I don't know about this. No, this will be a great opportunity. I'm not listening to my intuition. You know, that was another thing I learned. If the shoe fits, you don't feel it. You don't have to justify it. So they were going back and forth until one man stood up in the back. And ironically, this man wasn't a delegate. And nobody really recognized him. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess this part up. Wow, okay, so he gets up and he goes over the arguments they were making, and finally he says, "They may turn every tree into a gallows, every hole into a grave, and yet the words of that parchment can never die. To the mechanic in the workshop, they will speak hope. To the merchant in his shop, it means opportunity and freedom. Sign that parchment. Sign it if at the next moment the noose is around your neck. For that parchment will be the textbook of freedom, the Bible of the rights of man forever." So these guys got fired up. They were like, whoa. And they all started signing. A little trivia. John Hancock was actually the president of the Continental Congress. He signed first, and they're like, whoa, John, there's only so much room here. What's with the big signature? And he said, "I just want to make sure goofy old George can read my name without his bifocals." And they got fired up and started signing right away. One last piece of trivia before I say the last two sentences here. The first state to sign, and the delegates said this to themselves, became the state motto. Does anyone know the first state that signed? No. No, it wasn't Delaware. It was actually New Hampshire. And these guys said, "Live free or die, baby." Woo! And everyone was like, whoa, okay. So one of the things I've always enjoyed about a unity service is we don't just hear great things from the minister, you know, letting us know how smart they are. They're always sharing about how they apply this stuff in their daily life, and then they give us a little suggestion of something that we could start applying for ourselves during the week. So you were handed in your program or pieces of paper, I actually created a little Declaration of Independence for everyone, and I'm just going to run through that here. And you don't have to sign it right now, but here we go. Today I declare my personal independence from the tyranny of the inner critic, the scaredy cat, who is obsessed about what others may think about me if I follow my intuition, my heart's desires. From now on, I declare my freedom to recognize, trust, and act on my intuitive hunches. I break out of my box with faith, the joyful expectancy that my intuition will guide me in wonderful ways. And then there's a little warning at the bottom. Signing this will make me subject to improved health, happiness, love, success, and prosperity, as well as an overall feeling of generosity and love for my fellows. So, one last thing. Wouldn't it be great to go through life like this? Come on. Wouldn't it be great to go through life like this? Yes! Thank you.